Justice Christopher Beale got into the thick of it today in his charge to the jury in the trial of Erin Patterson. He took a magnifying glass to the evidence as he stepped through the testimony of more than a dozen witnesses, summarised the lawyers' arguments, and even instructed the jury to disregard 2 points made by the Crown. We'll talk about this and more of what he said in court today. I'm Brooke Grebert-Craig, and this is The Mushroom Cook. We have just finished day 38 of Erin Patterson's murder trial, and as always, I'm joined by my colleague, court reporter Laura Placella.
Hey Brooke, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Not bad, let's start.
Now, the first thing that Justice Beale did this morning was give the jurors an update on the trial timeline.
He's provided them with a few updates this week, but this one felt a lot more definitive. He told them that his charge would continue for the rest of today, Thursday, go into tomorrow, Friday, and then he would finally finish on Monday. By that stage, there will be 2 jurors who will be balloted off. So right now, to remind our listeners, there are 14 jurors after we lost one earlier in the trial. 2 will be balloted off to leave us with the magic number of 12, and then they'll start their deliberations. But once they're done for the day, they won't go home. They'll be bussed to local accommodation to be sequestered, and then they'll return the next day to the Latrobe Valley Law Courts to continue deliberating.
So this will all be taking place in week 10 of the trial.
Yes, and I really can't believe that at any stage we thought this would actually just go for 5 weeks.
Crazy. So Justice Beale then returned to the topic of incriminating conduct today.
He did. So we ran through the list yesterday of all of the alleged incriminating conduct that is being put forward by the prosecution. Justice Beale only got a chance yesterday to make his way through one of those points, and he spent the rest of the day making his way through the list. This involves a lot of summary. He's essentially summarising up to 7 weeks of evidence and then turning to summaries of the prosecution and the defence arguments. So today, when we make our way through it ourselves, a lot of this will probably sound familiar to our listeners, but this is Justice Beale really preparing the jury for their deliberations. There is so much evidence in this case that the judge's charge involves these summations to make sure they're best placed when it is time to commence those important deliberations.
So let's move to the first point. He began summarising the evidence relating to Erin allegedly lying about using dried mushrooms from an Asian grocer in the beef Wellington meal that she cooked on July 29, 2023.
This was the point that Justice Beale spent the longest on today. I think he finished with this topic just before lunchtime. And the reason for this was he essentially had to go through the evidence of almost a dozen witnesses. There were a lot of people Erin spoke to in the days after the lunch about the source of the mushrooms. She was speaking to doctors at Leongatha Hospital. She was speaking to Senior Public Health Advisor Sally Ann Atkinson and speaking to Child Protection Worker Katrina Cripps. For the most part, all of these witnesses testified that Erin told them she used button mushrooms from a local Woolworths and dried mushrooms from an Asian grocer, but she could not remember the exact location of that shop. Justice Beale also summarised the evidence from Erin and how she realised in the days after the lunch that mushrooms she had foraged and dehydrated may have ended up in a container with the dried mushrooms from the Asian grocer. This was the container she said she grabbed and tipped into the mushroom duck cell, believing at the time that it only contained the dried mushrooms from the Asian grocer.
Justice Beale then outlined what the prosecution alleges. Here's what he said. It's his words, but not his voice.
The prosecution argued she sat on her hands, slow to respond to the Department of Health, not responsive at times. Giving evidence, she appeared to have a remarkable memory. She could remember the 28th of April 2023 was a Friday and not a Monday, but she couldn't recall the shop or even the suburb. Beggars belief.
He went on.
Most importantly, they argue no one else got sick. Monash Council had no complaints. The department had no reports of people falling ill. And why would she dehydrate already dried mushrooms? She told you the dehydrated mushrooms weren't as crisp, so she whacked them into the dehydrator. They argued that was a ridiculous lie to keep the possibility that an Asian store was the source of death cap mushrooms.
Justice Beale then told the jury that the defence claims the prosecution cherry-picked their evidence.
It was argued the prosecution ignored the nuances of human behaviour. They argued she was consistent with where the mushrooms came from. She had many conversations with many people.
He went on.
But things get recounted and it goes down the line. Big details get minimised, forgotten, altered. There were approximately 21 people who spoke to Erin Patterson in 24 hours, and memory is not a video recording. Time plays a part. Delays can affect recollection of events. None of the witnesses, including Erin Patterson, is immune. Recollection can be unreliable even when a person is trying to be honest.
Justice Beale then moved on to summarise the evidence relating to Erin allegedly lying about feeding her children the leftovers of the beef Wellington meal with the mushrooms and pastry scraped off.
Just like he did with the previous allegation, he took the jury to the evidence of certain witnesses. Here it was the evidence from Simon Patterson, Erin's estranged husband, and her 2 children. He also brought them back to her evidence as well. He said that Erin testified that she scraped off the mushrooms and pastry from the 6 beef Wellington she prepared before serving the meat to her children with mashed potato and beans. He also reminded the jury that Erin said that the leftovers found in her outside bin comprised the scraped off mushrooms and pastry, as well as the remainder of her beef Wellington that she didn't eat at the lunch. Justice Beale then took the jury to the evidence of Erin's son, who told an investigator that his mum said to him and his sister that night that Don and Gail were unwell. He remembers his mum saying to him that she thought the cause of the illness could have been the lunch.
Justice Beale said the prosecution argued that considering the children did not experience any symptoms, her story about feeding them the leftovers must be a lie to cover her tracks. He also added that the prosecution had questioned why Erin would feed the leftovers to her children when there was evidence to suggest she knew by that stage on July 30 that Don and Gail were unwell.
It was at this stage that Justice Beale actually told the jury to disregard 2 arguments made by Crown Prosecutor Nanette Rogers in her closing address. The first argument related to the fact that Dr. Rogers asserted that even though they were scraped off, the toxins from the death caps would have penetrated the meat that Erin served her children.
Dr. Rogers overstated what the evidence was, so you disregard that argument that the amatoxins penetrated the meat. It's not necessarily so.
Justice Beale said the second argument related to the fact that Dr. Rogers asserted that the children would have experienced symptoms if they had eaten the leftovers of the 6 beef Wellington. But he told the jury no expert witness was asked whether they would have expected the children to have experienced these symptoms after eating the meat with the mushrooms and pastry scraped off.
You have no expert evidence as to whether that would be the case, and so I direct you to disregard the argument. You would be speculating if you would go down that path.
Justice Beale said the defence argued that if Erin knew there were death caps in the meal, why would she tell people leftovers existed at all? The defence said it made no sense on the prosecution case that Erin discarded the meat of the 6 beef Wellington and put the rest in her outside bin.
Why get rid of meat but keep the mushroom paste and pastry? Why put the pastry in the bin as a deliberate ruse? The simple explanation is the much more likely explanation. She scraped off the paste and fed the meat to her children.
Justice Beale then summarised the evidence relating to Erin allegedly refusing to obtain treatment for her children.
He took the jury to the evidence of witnesses from Leongatha Hospital, including Dr. Veronica Foote and Nurse Carly Ashton, as well as the evidence of Erin once again. He said the prosecution argued that Erin was reluctant to have her children assessed because she knew that they had not consumed death cap mushrooms. But on the other hand, he said the defence argued that Miss Ashton was wrong when she said she found out that Erin's children had consumed the leftovers on her first presentation to the hospital. He said the defence claimed that her memory of this was inconsistent with the evidence of her colleagues, who said that they found out that Erin's children had eaten the leftovers when Erin returned to hospital later that morning on July 31. Justice Beale said the defence argued that when Erin returned to hospital and was told that the toxins could have penetrated the meat and that her children might be in danger, that she made arrangements for them to be brought to hospital straight away.
Justice Beale moved on to summarise the evidence relating to Erin discarding her dehydrator at Kumwara Tip on August 2.
It is worth noting that Erin has admitted to dumping her dehydrator, so this isn't alleged conduct, but the defence argue that it shouldn't be used as incriminating conduct. Justice Beale reminded the jury that Erin testified that she panicked after she said Simon accused her of poisoning his parents with the dehydrator. Erin told the jury she was scared she would be blamed for making everyone sick, and so she took her dehydrator to the tip you mentioned, Brooke, and dumped it there. Justice Beale brought the jury back to the 4 deceptions alleged by the prosecution in its closing address, including the sustained cover-up, which did involve Erin getting rid of the appliance. He said the prosecution argued, though, that the panic Erin said she was experiencing did not explain the extensive and prolonged cover-up she ended up embarking on.
But on the other hand, Justice Beale said the defence argued that if Erin was planning a murder, she would have disposed of the dehydrator much earlier.
She disposed of it when she did, Mr. Mandy argued, because she panicked and people would wrongly think that she poisoned them. Poisoned the lunch guests deliberately.
Justice Beale then turned to the evidence relating to Erin resetting phone B multiple times, providing police phone B instead of phone A, and lying about her phone number ending in 835 during her record of interview.
He reminded the jury that the prosecution alleged that Erin concealed phone A, her usual phone, from police during a search of her house, and instead handed over phone B, a dummy phone, which she factory reset multiple times. He said the prosecution argued that Erin concealed phone A because she knew it would implicate her in the deliberate poisoning of her guests. But alternatively, he said the defence argued that Erin would not have gone to the trouble of setting up phone B as a dummy phone, since it would have been much easier for her to factory reset phone A and simply discard it straight after the lunch.
Justice Beale added that Erin testified that phone A was not seized during the search and was left on a windowsill untouched by police. She also testified that she set up phone B because phone A was damaged and she wanted to change phone numbers after Simon accused her of poisoning his parents.
Referring to Erin's testimony, Justice Beale said that the defence argued that the prosecution was coming up with convoluted theories for why there was an absence of evidence, and the explanations that Erin provided were the most reasonable.
And with that, Justice Beale told the jury he will continue to summarise the remainder of the alleged incriminating conduct tomorrow.
And then he'll move on with the rest of his charge.
Thanks, Laura. See you then.